Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Ask me almost anything. My name is Glenn Gers. I operate Writing for Screens, the YouTube channel, the website, the Instagram feed. I am here every Monday through Friday, unless I can't do it that day, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Working mostly on a project in which I am showing you screenwriting step by step, talking you through the writing of a script. But once in a while, like today, I will just take the full session to do Ask Me Anything. Ask me almost anything. If you are not watching this live, you can still ask me anything. You just go to writingforscreens.com on the internet and click on the Contact Me button on just about any page, and you will find a window opened up that will get you an email to me. And if you want to ask me a question or send me a comment, that's one way to do it. But it's not the only way. You can also just put it in the comments right here under this video or any video on this channel. That will all go to me. Ask me a question that way. I will try to answer it here. I will also, if possible, answer it right there in the comments or right there by reply email if you went through the website. There's so many ways to contact me, at least for the moment. At a certain point, I will stop doing this, and then I won't answer. Hey, look, there's a whole lot of you out there. There's Ellen. There's Double Naught. There's 99 Precinct and 234 Pika and Donate Yen. And this is Kitschy. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are doing Ask Me Almost Anything. And there's Maria. Hello, Maria. Happy Friday to you all. Brief note for those of you who are regulars or like to come back. I will not be here this coming Monday, the 27th of September. For those of you watching on recording, boy, is this boring. Monday, I have an appointment. I will not be here that afternoon. I'll be here Tuesday. Okay, let us begin. Let us get to the Ask Me's. Fun Flash Forward sent me a message, and she said, I really enjoy reading a craft book, but if I try to read an article online, it will usually have a few links to other craft articles. But then those craft articles have links to other articles, so I get overwhelmed going down a rabbit hole. Don't get me wrong, I love the billions of links. If the articles were all organized together nicely in one bundle without leading to a billion different links, it would be fine. But I already suffer from chronic disorganization and attention issues, so these links are a problem. What would you advise? And this really leads to a larger question, which is, aside from links, there's also so much advice online now for how to write screenplays particularly, and there are so many theories, so many teachers. If you go on Amazon and type in how to write a screenplay, the list of books, it would take you the rest of your life to read all of them. So that's really the big issue, is what do you do when you get overwhelmed with all the questions, all the advice? I get overwhelmed by the questions. What do you do when you get overwhelmed by all the different advice you seem to need in order to write a screenplay? So my first bit of advice on this is the links are a trick. Links are partly well-intentioned in that they have a lot to say, just like I have a lot of different little videos, and I have not started linking them, but I do understand the idea of like saying, oh, you also want to read this one, and you want to read that one, and this defines that. That's all fine. But to a certain extent, links are a trick. Links are the point of the internet. Everybody who is on every service that is on the internet, YouTube, whatever else, whatever magazine you're on, they want you to stay there. They want you to go from page to page because then you see more of their ads. And the more time you spend on their site, the more money they can attract. And that is what they are intending with all of those links, as well as education. So resist if you wish. You are allowed to not follow every link. You are allowed to not watch every video. And YouTube is probably going to shut me down right now. But that is a fact. But the larger question then gets to so much screenwriting advice, and it's conflicting, and it's not coherent, and frankly, a lot of it is worthless. So how do you decide what's worthy and what's not? What do you need? That's the question. I'm going to give you an answer. How much education does an artist need? The short answer, I think, here is write first, study after. And in fact, that is such good advice, I'm going to just type it in here. Write first, study after. And I'm going to do that. I'm even going to put it in a really cool typeface, and I'm going to make it big. Okay, so dig this. This is my advice. Here's the thing. Yes, there is a lot to learn. It is complicated stuff. Screenwriting is not easy. It is not natural. It is not natural to any human being to write a script. Screenwriting is not a natural or normal or sensible form of communication. So yes, you will need to study screenwriting, but the most important thing you can do to do screenwriting is do screenwriting. It would be better for you to just think about what you want to see on the screen and remember all the stuff you liked and fantasize about all the stuff you wish you could see and do your best to write that down. And then you would have something to try and make better. It would be better to do that than to spend all your time trying to learn all these rules. You will learn more from writing a script than from studying how to write a script. You will learn more from writing a terrible script, an incompetent script, a pile of nonsense. It will still be more valuable than a lesson, okay? That, in fact, I am just going to say, anything worth doing is worth doing badly, in the sense that it would be better to write a bad script than to study how to write a great script. You can study until the end of time and you will still be starting off as a beginner. So that is my basic thing, is with all of the theories out there, one of the main things you should be doing is sort of listening in yourself. Does this help me? Does this click with me? Does this make sense to what I like and what I am trying to do? It won't all. And a lot of it will just feel like it's telling you how somebody else was great. And while that's interesting and it can be helpful, it doesn't make you feel like you know how to write. So I would say, really, the scientific test of this is you can write. You actually could write a good script without ever having taken a screenwriting class. You do not need to go to film school. You do not need to even watch this. And like, if you want to turn this off right now, go to your TV set and turn it off, and walk away and write a script. I would say do that. Okay, that is more valuable than any number of lessons. When you have written it and things don't work that well, you'll actually be able to learn more from the lessons. That is the point. Write first, study after. If you only have an hour a day, if you're going to school or going to work and you only have a little amount of time, write first, study after. Okay? If you only get to write a couple of lines, write those lines. If you don't get to read all those books on how to write, don't do it. Don't watch me until after you have written. Do not turn on these live streams until you have written something. That is my thought. Okay. So that's the first Ask Me Anything. So now we're going to go to a more practical one. Jose asked, what is the difference between foreshadowing and exposition? And that is an excellent question. Foreshadowing is setting up something, hinting at something that is going to come. It is a mention of something which we will later either see fulfilled or in some way intimates, suggests, hints at, foreshadows that another thing is going to happen or another. So that's foreshadowing. It is a hint. Exposition is information that you are trying to get to the audience. So in theory, foreshadowing could be exposition. They could both be the same thing. Exposition is simply any information that you want the audience to know. And so you have to put it into the script somehow. And I've done a whole marvelous, I might add, video about it called Exposition, Your New Best Friend. That's a link. And it's not a link, you can't click it, but that's a thing which is sending you to another thing, and I'm sorry, but there you go. Okay. Exposition is information that you as the writer are trying to get to the audience. It is not information that people are passing within the script. Like if one character is telling the other character something, that's not exposition, that's drama. So my big lesson is try to make your exposition as an artist. I want you to know that this guy grew up in Liverpool. Make that something that the character needs to say to another character, or some other way that you get that information across in the story. And then exposition is drama, and that's when it's good. Exposition can be good. Okay, I'm just going to quickly read through. Okay, so let us get to the next question. This one's a big one, and it actually does refer to Tyler Mowry, who Maria just mentioned. Hauke from Germany wrote me, a young YouTuber, Tyler Mowry, often talks about how a good movie at its core has a philosophical conflict at its heart. This conflict is being played out through the characters clashing because of their different values or philosophical positions. What do you think of this approach? Are good films basically philosophical contentions by other more emotionally moving means? That is a good question. And my basic answer is kind of yeah. I believe that it is true that you can find in many films characters taking different sides, different positions on an issue, or being interested in different philosophical ideas and having a conflict over them. In a certain sense, you can say like, well, is family more important than society in The Godfather? Is family more important than the law? That sort of is a philosophical debate. So the answer is yes, you can indeed break down many good films into the characters are carrying philosophical positions with them, and they do come into conflict, or their stories will play out those questions. So the answer is yes, you can have that be true, but you don't have to. My answer would be, that it can't be just a philosophical argument. It has to be also a story in which the philosophy is played out or tested or examined. But I am pretty sure that Tyler Mowry did not say philosophical argument instead of a story. He said the story is, in fact, also a philosophical argument. And I believe that that is true. I don't believe it's always true. I believe there are certain stories that are just not interested in taking positions on anything. You can always interpret it. I believe we all know that everyone can spend all their time interpreting the hell out of anything, even things that were not intended to be interpreted, you can interpret them. So I would not say that you have to make something a philosophical argument. And if you do make it a philosophical argument, it has to be a philosophical argument played out within and by the story. But within that, I would say, yeah, that's true. Doesn't have to be, and it can't just be. But yes, most stories have a philosophical layer inherent in them, and some people like to bring it out more and some people don't. And that is okay. Really, I have not watched that much Tyler Mowry because I just don't have time to watch all the other teachers. But I actually liked some of what I saw of Tyler Mowry. Tyler Mowry is a really well-intended and hardworking teacher. He's teaching from that analytical point of view. In other words, his way of teaching is to read as many how-to things as possible, watch as many how-to things as possible, and break down things and analyze them. And this is sort of a general thing I would say. The problem with analyzing why something is good, like, wow, that's a good movie because they did this thing, that will not tell you how the writer got to that ability to do that. That's my problem with all this academic analytical teaching. And what I'm saying is, it's like with the philosophy thing. It's not that you don't want to have it. It's just not enough, because while the things that you are seeing are there, it is good to know that this story did this thing, and it was good, and that you can do that too. But you can't like make a checklist. This is not like plumbing or being an electrician. You can't say, okay, I'm going to use this type of cable and connect it to these wires, and when I do that, the electricity is going to run through it, and I have done a good job. You can't do that with scripts. You can't say, because this guy did this good thing, if I do this good thing, I have written a good script. It just doesn't work that way. There's an other layer of creativity. All art, all creative work, it's not like any other kind of work, because there is no checklist of when you're doing it right. In fact, I gotta say, no one will ever know if you did it right. There is no right. That's the problem with art. That, like, think about this. Think about the movie that you think is the greatest movie or show in history. Absolutely, like, this is flawless. I guarantee you there are people who don't like it, who think it is not good, who think all the things that you think are good about it, they think, God, that's annoying. Boy, I don't believe that. That doesn't work at all. That's dumb. So there is no such thing as like, I'm going to plug these two parts of the wire together and the electricity is going to run. That does not exist in writing. In writing, you never know if you got it right, and you can't just say, well, Dr. Zhivago did that, so I'm doing it, so I'm Dr. Zhivago. It doesn't work that way. The thing, and what you need to do as an artist is learn to stop thinking that way and start thinking the really difficult way, which is, I am going to make this thing up. I am going to use everything that I can figure out from all the other examples, and then I'm going to have to put mine together the best I can, and I'm going to have to show it to people and see how much of what I did they get. And that's the best you get as far as I did it right or I did it wrong. And the worst thing about that is that you will get people who love what you do if you're any good, and then that doesn't mean that you will succeed. So there's just so many layers of I don't know in art. And that's what I think is the problem with the amount of teaching, which is, here's how these great people did this great thing. I am breaking it down. That feels really satisfying. I now know exactly how they did it. But first of all, you don't know how they did it. I can, one of the most fun things is to read behind the scenes stuff, especially now they have some really great ones. They have whole books about like how Chinatown or Casablanca or Wizard of Oz. They have like full books in which they detail how that came to be. And all of these masterpieces were a mess while they were being made. Okay, Chinatown had a different ending in the script. And I believe actually that the ending in the script is not as good as the ending that the director brought. American Beauty, same thing. Great script, great writer, wrote a script with a different ending. The director, having finished filming that ending, having finished the film, watched it and said, you know what, that ending doesn't work. And he just snipped it off, and it was brilliant. It was so powerful and wonderful. Anyway, so the answer is, what you really need to learn, in addition to all that, I love this and this is how they made that character do this, is the process of writing. That is the most important thing that I believe a writer can learn. The process of writing your thing. In fact, I'm going to see. There we go. If you can get a good process, you'll be as good a writer as you can be. And who knows what that means. Okay, I'm going to take a minute here to, there's been tons of comments, so I am going to look at them. By the way, just wanted to say, I like Tyler Mowry. I think he's considering he has not had the opportunity to write and make movies in a professional world, he's doing really good. And I truly do enjoy watching his stuff when I get to. I do not want to slam. There are some teachers that I would slam. He's not one of them. He's okay. All right. What is your approach when you rewrite? How do you spot the problems? I don't know what is good and bad in your first draft. That's a toughie, a biggie. We will have to talk about that. The first thing I would say about that, just in general, as far as how do you know how to rewrite, what needs fixing? Do you really not know? That's my question. My feeling is that there's going to be some things, like when you're watching me write, I can say, oh, that's not quite right yet. I know that. I'll get to it. You're doing the best you can as you go along. The mailman he has a headphone, mic on, and he's talking on the phone as he delivers mail, and he just shouts, just like walks down the street shouting. Anyway, if you really, really, really don't have any idea what's good or bad in your script, you probably need to show it to people. The only thing I would say about that is show it, recognize that you're going to hear different things. So show it to a lot of people. Unfortunately, if you really have no clue what's good or bad, you're going to need to show it to a lot of people because they're all going to find different things. And worst of all, most people don't know how to tell you what's wrong with your script. So they will solve it for you. And they will tell you some really bad idea for what you need. And they'll say, that's what's wrong is you haven't done this. What they're really saying is, there was a problem. I've solved it. This is my solution. But what you really need to know is the problem. You have to figure out your own solution to that problem. Anyway, I would say the other thing that you can do, Jose, as far as if you don't know if your own script is good or bad, put it away. Put it away and write something else. Once you have written something else and you go back to it, you'll probably see things that you don't think are as great as you wanted them to be, and then you'll work. Okay. Ironically, a lot of how-to stuff lacks the practical how-to part. Yeah, I know. A lot of how-to is not, is how great is that? Okay. Yes, you do kind of start to see your own problems the more you write. The more you write, the more you will get better at rewriting. Cool. I am glad. Ellen likes the idea that as you go through the outline, if you got it in the script, cut it out of the outline. You don't need it there, except the big topic breaks. Yes. Oh, this is good. You wouldn't know this. I mentioned it when I did it. I always, when I start, I make a copy of the outline, I put the date on it, and I put it aside so that I have the full outline. Yes, always keep copies of stuff before you start deleting. Cool. Thanks. I think rewriting is the hardest part. Okay. There is no one way, but that doesn't mean you can't how-to ways. Because it's like, my mom was a painter, and actually some of her work is up on that wall, and graphic artist. And she would take art classes at the Art Students League in New York City. And it's like you take a painting class and someone would say, this is a thing you can do. This is how to do this. And you take another painting class and another person would say, this is how you do this. That's all how to. It's all valuable. There isn't one way to do it, but that doesn't mean that you're not learning something. Yes. Oh, this is good. Okay, this is very good. I have to say, one of my best experiences with feedback is when I started a writers group of trusted, talented friends. It is so hard getting people, even friends, to read. Damn right, this is very, very valuable. I have never been in a writers group. I have visited a couple, and I know people who are in them, and I strongly suggest that you, I have writer friends, and I would definitely show stuff to them, but we weren't an organized group. But yes, a writing group, a writer's support group, if the people in it are trustworthy and kind and hopefully smart and talented, you will do well. But honestly, even if they're not smart and talented, if they're just kind, if they're just well-intended, you'll get a lot out of it. So I would say, if possible, and the nice thing is now, in the age of digital technology, you don't have to be in the same town with them. It used to be if you wanted a writing group, you had to find other writers in your neighborhood, and that was hard. But now there's a whole billion people out here on the internet. Surely there's ways to find, I don't personally know how, but there's got to be a way to set up a writing group. Oh, by the way, I would suggest, once again, I have mentioned, okay, the Screenwriting Life podcast, okay? This group, the Screenwriting Life podcast, has a Facebook group. I'm sorry, Facebook, I know Facebook is what it is, but the point is it's a group. And people often will say, like, I'm starting a writing group or whatever, and it seems like that's an acceptable thing to do, is to get into an online community on Facebook or other healthy places, and say, like, hey, anyone want to start a writing group? Okay. There's meetup writers groups. Yes, I am sure there are also, and I know Maria knows about this, Discord writing groups. And I believe there's also that other thing, Clubhouse. I have not done that either, but I know it exists. Yeah, I'm going to do that one last. Let me remind me of that. Okay, that's a fun one. Okay, yeah. I was wondering when people were going to start asking about the backdrop. Okay. Before we go on, though, I do have a couple of other prepared topics. The first one is, what do you think about the idea that you should write a script backwards from last scene to first? And actually, Matthew L. Asked me this, and he mentioned a specific writing guru, I guess. I don't know, Jeff Kitchen? I'm not sure. I do not know who Jeff Kitchen is. And so I cannot judge Jeff Kitchen's theory. But this idea of writing backwards is really interesting because it's complicated. You definitely, I believe, do want to know the ending when you begin writing. And this is tricky. When I say begin writing, I don't mean here. Hold on. This is important. The ending really is everything. It's really important. Your ending is the meaning of your story. The ending is going to define what your story says. Because if you have Macbeth, okay, and this guy uses black magic and ruthlessness and kills a lot of people to become the king, okay, if at the end of that story he lives and remains king, the message of that story is going to be, it is okay. Whatever you have to do to bring peace and happiness to your country, it's okay. In the case of actual Macbeth, he gets horribly slain because it isn't okay, in my opinion, to use whatever means you have to come to power. So therefore, the ending defines what Macbeth is about. Both versions of Macbeth are about a guy who ruthlessly uses magic and violence to become powerful. But what it says about that, what the final meaning of the story is the ending. And I think you'll find that's true of everything. There's other meanings, but the definitive meaning of a story comes from how it ends. And so by not choosing that ending, you're not going to really know what you're saying all the way through. Now, it is possible to write without knowing that. A lot of people do it. Most of them have some idea. Famously, Vince Gilligan had just one sentence for Breaking Bad. Obviously, he had a whole pilot, but what he said, the thing he said was, "I want it to be the story of how Mr. Chips becomes Scarface." Mr. Chips was a notoriously lovable English teacher in some old movies, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, novels. And Scarface is a brutal gangster who goes insane and ends up dying violently. And his point was he wanted this lovable teacher to become a brutal, murderous gangster. That's all he really knew. But he knew that. He knew where he was going. Likewise, Stephen King, he doesn't outline everything, but he has a rough idea what he wants to do. And possibly as the story goes along, he changes his mind. But honestly, I believe you are best to outline and to know the ending. And that's where the writing backwards thing comes in. Because if you are writing, quote, backwards, in the sense that you know what your ending is going to be, you're making your decision saying, I am going to have him believe this because then he is going to be rewarded or punished at the end by this. Cool. But that is not the same as actually writing backwards. And I wasn't sure when Matthew asked me this question about Jeff Kitchen's method of writing backwards, because at least the way that Matthew put it, he said, write the script backwards from the last scene to the first. And that I find weird. I do not know if it would be a good idea to write the last scene. It could be okay to write the last scene first if you're inspired, if you see the scene and you know what you want it to be, write it down, absolutely. I do not believe you have to write in order. If you have especially if you have an outline and you really have some scene that's boiling up in your head and you can just see it and you want to write it down and then go back and write everything that leads up to it. Cool. But I would not advise Memento style writing every scene in backwards order. That doesn't seem helpful. It seems arbitrary. I guess if it helps you, cool. Like I said, for all writing advice, if you feel like you go, oh my God, that would make it so much easier for me, great, do that. But I personally think that you'd probably do better to mostly write in the same direction the story is going. That's just me, and I do not personally write from beginning to end. I tend to write a bunch and then I get frustrated and I skip a bunch and I write a little other thing, and sometimes I write in totally out of order. But that's because I have an outline. Okay. Just about regarding getting feedback. The problem with friends or too nice people is they may not give honest feedback because they fear it may hurt your feelings. Yes, that is true as far as friends goes. Although, everybody's different, and if you can get a good, honest friend, cool. But a writing group or writer friends should know better than that. They should know that it does not help you to be lied to. You may also be giving off signals that you want to hear X or Y, and you should think about that. And also, there's nothing wrong with saying to somebody, I'm really fragile about this. I'm going to be kind. Tell me what you don't think it'll work, but don't slam it and don't be mean. That's fair. That's a fair request. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, look, we've got some meetup writing groups. I don't know what meetup is. I'm old. I'm sorry. Shut Up and Write, Writing with Friends, Green Mountain Writers groups are nice groups with feedback and emotional support. Thank you, RJ Sweda or RJS Weda, whichever. I'm betting you're RJ Sweda. Okay. All right. So I'm going to now, I'm going to take a couple of these questions because sure, why not? So Ellen wants to know the alien creatures reclining on the futon. All right. These are not that mysterious. They are called ugly dolls. They are cute little stuffed animals. I believe there's actually at this point a movie. You should check. I believe somebody took the intellectual property of ugly dolls and made a movie out of them. Anyway, the point is they I guess it was about 10, 15 years ago, they were a thing. They started. I just liked the design of them. We had a young child at the time. He's now grown. And so we were buying stuffed animals and I was like, I love these. He loved them for a while and then he stopped loving them. And instead of throwing them out, I took them. So ugly dolls. This actually is a giant fish pillow. And this has a story too. The giant fish pillow comes from a bass fishing shop or bass. I don't know the name of it. There's a chain of fishing and hunting gear supply stores around America called Bass. I think it's Bass Fishing Shop. Anyway, there's one of them. I had never been to one, and I was writing a movie called Mad Money, which was filmed in Shreveport, Louisiana. So for 2 weeks, I couldn't be on the set the whole time, although Callie Corey, the director, very kindly invited me to be there all the time. I personally couldn't get away. So I went down to Shreveport for 2 weeks, and in my spare time, when there was nothing, like on a Saturday, I had nothing to do. So I went to somebody. I said, what's cool in Shreveport? And somebody said, you could go to the Bass store. And I went there and it was great. It was great. They had all this cool stuff. And one of the things they had was that giant fish pillow. And I bought it. Okay. So, evil undead fish, indeed. It is. It's seen better times. Okay. My mom's paintings. You can only see 2 of them right now. And they're not actually this one and that one. And this big one is by a friend of mine named Christine Fulbright, who's a marvelous painter and artist. Almost all these things on the wall are in some way personal to me. In fact, they all are. Anyway, so yeah, that's the stuff. At some point, as I suspect that this will people keep asking, I will try and do a tour of my office and tell you what all this stuff is. But in the meantime, I have Wakar Ahmed's question. What are in these boxes? So we've really gotten far away from how to, but I'm going to do it. So these are all just personal photographs. Those are just pictures, family pictures and stuff like that. These are old, very early things I wrote. These are books that I'm using for research. Once we get up there, there's journals and letters, some of my old scripts back from the days when things were printed on paper instead of PDFs. The top corner is notes for novels. Like over the decades, as I've tried to write novels, I've typed, because it was back in the days when we had typing, notes for various things that I thought I was going to make into a novel. That whole box is full of those notes. Like I said, you guys have seen, if I work by talking to myself. Well, before there were computers, I did it by typing on paper, and I would just have these stacks and stacks of these notes to myself. Okay. All right. So, I want it to be subtle and cheesy. On the save the cat scenes. No, how to be subtle. Sorry. On save the cat scenes. Not too cheesy. How to be subtle and not too cheesy on save the cat scenes. Here's the thing. You don't have to save the cat. Save the Cat is a book full of some interesting tidbits, some of which are very useful, most of which are just honestly the rantings of a guy who had personal opinions, and he said they were universal rules, and they're really, really, really not. Save the Cat is one of the whacked out books of all time, really. His notions of what a theme is or what a genre is or the universal stories are so weird and unique to him and to his moment in the business. And they are not useful. So the basic principle of saving the cat is fine, which is you want a character who you want to like to do a thing that makes you like him. That's all Save the Cat is. Save the Cat means if you want a character to be likable, they have to do something that makes you like them. That's sort of the basic principle of writing. If you want a character to be hateful, you have to do something to make you hate him. But the idea that you actually have to save a cat or do a especially nice thing, that may not be good. The truth is, there's some characters who you like them because they're not. There's a character played by Walter Matthau in The Fortune Cookie. Fortune Cookie is a very old movie. I'm going to put it down here because I like it. All right. So, The Fortune Cookie, it was a Billy Wilder movie. And it's old. It's probably inaccessible to most of you. But the one thing I like about it, the thing that I admire about it, is it's a character story. It's the development of people in their relationships. You just don't see that so much anymore. It's about a TV cameraman at a football game who gets he's standing on the sidelines with one of these gigantic old-time TV cameras, live TV cameras, and a football player, a star football player, runs into him while making a play and knocks him over a tarpaulin. And so the guy's brother-in-law, the cameraman's brother-in-law, is a shyster lawyer, and he insists on having a lawsuit saying that his neck was injured, and so to make millions of dollars off the TV company. But this has two effects. One, it brings the cameraman's ex-wife back into his life, possibly for love, but possibly for the millions that he might make. And it brings the football player who ran him over into his life. And it's just a marvelous, slow development of these relationships in this horribly twisted situation. Anyway, the point about that is the brother-in-law's character is one of the most hateful people in the world. And so it's fun that this guy is just such a monster. He's certainly not saving any cats, is my point. Honestly, Luca Brasi in The Godfather, we like him. He doesn't do anything except have a hard time articulating himself. He doesn't save any cats. He's a murderer. But we like him because he honestly respects the Don and wants to express himself, and he can't. And then spoilers, he tragically dies. Anyway, the point is, there's no cats here. Saving cats, not necessary. The issue is, if you want the audience to feel something about the character, you have to have them do something which helps the audience feel that. That's simple. You don't need Save the Cat anymore. Save the Cat is actually okay on log lines. Not, you can't take anything in Save the Cat as gospel, but some of the stuff about log lines, about the idea of breaking it down to like who's it about, what's the genre, that's cool. Okay. Anyway, all right. They are a treasure trove of old screenplays. They're just my old screenplays. Do you ever look back at very old things you wrote? Yes, I do. More now that I'm teaching, I'm actually looking back at some stuff which has been fascinating, and I will try and put some of it on the website on Writingforscreenscom under creative. That's a good place to look for my old scripts. All right. So, who would you say is your favorite screenwriter to read? Charlie Kaufman is, and yes, Coen Brothers are also quite. Oh yes, speaking of Coen Brothers and Save the Cat, let us not forget that in Llewyn Davis, Inside Llewyn Davis, the Coen Brothers movie about the folk scene in the 1950s and early 60s in New York City, there's a cat who does not get saved. And they deliberately did that, and they deliberately made it look like the cat on the cover of Save the Cat. It was their way of saying, you don't got to save the cat. So just a little inside bit there that I thought was really funny when I noticed it. And read, in fact, yes, they were conscious of not saving that cat. Anyway, it's funny. A lot of people have asked, what screenwriters would you read? And I would say almost none. I mean, yeah, you read them to see how it's done. But honestly, the screenwriters you want to know are the ones you watch. And there are so many of those. I love scripts, and I love watching stuff. So they're just great writers. But I would say reading scripts comes after. For one thing, often you can't find the scripts. But I would always say the first thing that is important is seeing the script, seeing the movie, the show, whatever. But yes, Charlie Kaufman, the Coen Brothers. I really like some of Scott Frank's work, although I was pained by his performance at the Emmys. That was not a good look, Scott Frank, but damn, you've written some great scripts. I think The Lookout is phenomenal. I think The Interpreter, not all his, but good. Queen's Gambit is terrific. Anyway, there are so many. Billy Wilder, again, is one of my favorites. Sam Esmail, who did Mr. Robot, absolutely knocked me out. Fleabag is phenomenal. I love Neil Simon. He's an old writer. I think Aaron Sorkin is always good to read. Really annoying as hell, but really exciting. Just there's a lot of great writers. There's a show called Dead to Me, a series on Netflix, Dead to Me. That's really true. There's so many good shows lately. I really loved Euphoria. I thought that was a knockout. Those are all good scripts. I can't say to read them. I have not read them. But I can tell you they're good scripts, and I learn from them by watching them. Okay, actually, writing novels, screenwriting advice can be applied. Yes, that is true. Want to know what the hard line is between the two formats? Yes, there is the great. I would let me just throw this out there. All of you, think about this. Whatever you are writing, does it have to be a script? Could you possibly write it as anything else? Could you write it as a play? Could you write it as a story, as a novel, as a graphic novel, as a comic strip, as anything any podcast, anything that is not a script? Because a script is a terrible thing to read. Everybody hates reading scripts. No one wants to read a script. I don't want to read a script, and I love scripts. So if you can take your work and get it out of scripts, remember, if you wrote a novel, and the form of a novel can be very script-like. Like you could write it almost like a script, but take out the damn slug lines, take out the dialogue things, free yourself up to write inside people's minds. I urge you to not write scripts, if at all possible. But the actual dividing line is script format. That's it. The main dividing line between fiction and scripts is script format and the intended market, because the rules for script writing are not just formatting rules, they are business rules, as in this will not sell, and therefore don't write a script about it. Or this is how scripts should be shaped because other scripts were shaped like this, and much less than any other art form, you have any other art form is more flexible than script writing in terms of the things that people expect you to do, the formula, the rules. So the answer is the main dividing line between a script and any other form of fiction or drama is the format of the page and the intended market, the use of it. Okay, we got a lot of questions here, and we're coming up on the end. So I'm gonna just take a quick look at them. I think it's better to develop a love affair between two. Slowly, just entertain them with cute, sweet, romantic storylines. It's not a weird question, but it's a question that I don't think I can answer right now. I would ask you, 99 Precinct, please send me a more specific note on, there we go, writingforscreens.com, contact me. Click the contact me button. You can email me directly that way, and I can discuss the specifics of your question more, because it's not, to say, is it better in general? There is no better. Is it better for what you're trying to accomplish? That's where we would get into it. There is no better, I tend to do often love stories where people fall in love, boom. Like that's what we're going to do in the Untitled Podcast Killer. They're going to, the love affair is going to develop slowly, but they're going to fall into bed right away. So anyway, that is that. What if you want a character to do something that makes them hate themselves? That's great. Do that and then tell that story. That's a great, that's wonderful. You have to recognize that some people in Hollywood may not like a character who hates themselves, but honestly, many characters in great films hate themselves. It's a matter of what they do with that hate. Some people, some characters will then behave in certain ways. They will actually behave very well because of their self-hatred, or they will separate themselves from others. There's a lot to the psychology of that. A character who does something that makes them hate themselves, but you have to decide what story you're telling about that situation. Are you telling a story about how that destroys their life? Are you telling a story about how they overcome that? Does that motivate them to do an entirely different thing? There's nothing wrong with a character doing something that makes them hate themselves. That's just what your story is about then. What do folks? We don't have time for suspension of disbelief yet. I even have it here. We will get to it next time around, but that's too long for the few minutes we've got left. What suggestions do you recommend in a fresh take on a cliche cop show? Couple of things to make anything fresh, any genre fresh. First of all, try and put it in an interesting world. Like a cop show. Like famously, the guy who is now done Knives Out, his first movie was Brick, which was an hard-boiled detective story set in a California suburban high school. One thing you can do with that is talk about that. The other is take a point of view on cops. Don't be cliche. You can do cops. And, one of the things that would be great, they did this a long time ago and they haven't done that much of it, the real lives of cops, not just the cop drama. The truth is most cops, most of the time, are doing boring, frustrating, complex things, and the drama within their lives and the drama between their lives and their job, that's all really interesting. You know, I had an idea for a cop show which was set inside a surveillance center when policing became more full-time digital, when you know, drones and surveillance cams were the main way that cops operated. Um, that's it, you know, or set it in history. Do a cop show about cops in the 1940s. You know, I don't know. There's so many things. Find something that makes it feel new and fresh so that you can use the genre. Okay, I got to stop, so I'm going to stop. Okay, this is, yeah. This is sort of what I was saying before. He's never read a screenwriting book. Yes, of course. You don't need to read. He's not an innate storyteller, and he watched a lot of movies. He watched a lot of movies. Notoriously, anybody who wants to be a screenwriter, you should be watching a lot of movies, and you should be watching them over and over again, and you should be taking them apart and analyzing them. I recommend my own video on this topic. You do not need a screenwriting book. You do not need me, except to tell you this. Go watch movies, figure out what you like about them, and do your version of that. Try to do that. And you're going to have to do it over and over again. And that's how you learn how to do it. Then study after. Wilder and Diamond. Yes, The Apartment. I love 1, 2, 3. Yes, and the Charade and Atlantic City are phenomenal scripts. Charade is genius. Atlantic City is so unknown and so great. I strongly recommend that you guys see all of these. Although 1, 2, 3, I mean, it's okay, but it's not his best. Whereas Sunset Boulevard and The Fortune Cookie and The Apartment and Double Indemnity, we're talking the goods. Even Lost Weekend, although I mean, it's fine, but that's in a class of old movies. Okay, I'm really glad that you guys are all here. This was really fun. We will get to suspension of disbelief, I promise. But in the meantime, it's been an hour. I'm tired. I'm gonna go.